The wind howled across the barren edge of the Arizona desert, scattering dust like ash from a dying fire. The storm rolled over the canyons like a beast stretching its back, clawing at the ragged rooftops of the farmhouse that clung to the earth, like a wounded animal. Inside the dim-lit cabin, sweat dripped from her brow, blood pooled beneath her, and the walls, paper-thin, did nothing to mute her screams. She gripped the edge of the birthing cot until her knuckles paled, the pain shredding through her like barbed wire. Each push felt like it would rip her apart. The midwife muttered prayers under her breath, eyes darting toward the closed door. Outside, Boots paced, waiting, not for her well-being, only for the verdict. Almost, the midwife whispered. One more. A final scream tore from her throat, hoarse and raw. Then silence. She blinked through a haze, the silence louder than thunder. No cries, no movement. The midwife stared at the small bundle in her hands, face unreadable. The door creaked open. Her husband entered, tall, lean, and bone-eyed, like someone who had long ago stopped seeing the world in color. His mother followed, her mouth already curved in distaste. "It's a girl," the midwife said flatly. His jaw clenched. The old woman exhaled through her nose a thin, snake-like hiss. Again. The husband moved forward, slow and sure. He looked down at the newborn, blue-lipped, unmoving. His eyes didn't flicker, not once. "She's not breathing," he said. She just came out," the midwife stammered. "Sometimes it takes—" "She's dead." His voice cut like a blade. "Dig a hole. Same place." The midwife hesitated, but the old woman's glare turned her legs to stone. She swaddled the baby in a stained cloth, lips trembling. The door shut behind them, sealing the silence back in. She tried to sit up, her body screaming in protest. Her lips were dry, split, her voice too weak to shout. But her heart knew. She knew. That child wasn't dead. The woman, no name spoken, no name needed, reached for the edge of the cot, blood running down her thighs like melted wax. She slipped once, then caught herself, dragged her body to the door and clawed it open. Rain smacked her face, the scent of iron and mesquite heavy in the air. They were already behind the barn. A shallow patch of earth was being scooped away, fast and violent. She caught a glimpse of the cloth, mud-streaked, too small. Her legs gave out, but no one looked back. She didn't scream. Her throat had forgotten how. Lightning flashed, thunder cracked, and with it came a rider. From the black beyond the property line, a figure emerged, mounted on a black and white paint horse, hair bound in a single braid that hung down like a river of night. He wore no hat. The rain soaked him but seemed to slide off like oil from leather. He dismounted without a word. The family froze. The man's hand went to the revolver at his belt, but something in the rider's stillness made him stop. The stranger stepped toward the mound of dirt. "Don't," the husband warned. The rider ignored him, kneeling beside the grave. His hand touched the soil, fingers pressing into the wet earth like he was feeling for a heartbeat. A moment passed, then another. "She's not dead," the man said softly. The in-laws stared. "She breathes," he continued, voice calm, certain. "The earth hasn't taken her." The old woman scoffed. "Get off this land," she cries beneath the dirt. The mother pulled herself forward on her hands, pain be damned, until she reached the edge of the group. Her eyes met the rider's. "Give her to me," she croaked. He didn't wait. His hands clawed at the soft earth, the rain helping, soaking. The midwife looked away, her shoulders shaking. The husband's fists balled, but he didn't move. The rider found the cloth. Gently he lifted the bundle, unwrapped her. A soft whimper, then a ragged cry. Not loud, not strong, but enough. Enough to cut the sky in two. The woman collapsed forward, sobbing with no sound, her body too broken to hold her sorrow upright. The stranger placed the baby into her arms, not saying a word. Her heart swelled with fire and ruin, everything at once. The old woman turned her back, She'll curse this house. The husband didn't look at them. He stared at the open grave, water filling it. She belongs to me, the mother said through clenched teeth, her arms wrapping the baby tighter. You bury her again, and I swear to God I'll bury all of you first. No one answered her. Later, in the stillness of the cabin, the rider stood by the door while she fed the child with trembling hands. The infant's cry had quieted to soft breaths, her tiny hand resting against her mother's chest. You should leave, he said, voice low. They won't let her live. She's mine. She always was. That doesn't mean they'll stop trying. The midwife hovered in the doorway, holding a satchel. They're saying you stole her from death. They'll say worse soon. She's breathing, the mother whispered, rocking slowly. That's all I care about. The rider's eyes were unreadable, set like river stones. Then ride before the dawn. I can't walk. Then crawl. The mother stared at the baby, a face like her own, eyes shut tight, lips like a slit of peach skin. She doesn't even have a name, she murmured. Names come later. Breathing comes first. Outside, the storm began to die, but the darkness lingered. The kind that had nothing to do with the sky. The in-laws retreated to the main house, but the mother knew what silence meant in their world. It was always the calm before they tried to erase you. She pressed a kiss to her daughter's head. Damp, warm, real. A crack sounded outside. A door. Slammed too hard, the rider stiffened. They'll come soon. Then we go now. He offered his hand. She took it. Blood on her thighs, salt on her cheeks, child at her breast. The cabin behind them would vanish before morning, she knew. Burnt, perhaps. Rewritten, but tonight, she would ride, with death behind her and life against her heart. The rider helped her onto his horse. The infant was swaddled close. The saddle creaked as they rode out, wind at their backs. She didn't look back. The desert swallowed sound quickly, leaving only hoofbeats and the distant call of coyotes. Somewhere in the earth, behind a barn now, shrinking into the storm's edge, a hole filled with water. It would not hold a body tonight, not hers, not her daughter's, not yet. The rain had softened the earth, making the trail slick and treacherous, but the horse pressed forward, muscles rippling beneath soaked hide. She clung to the saddle with one arm, the other cradling the child wrapped in damp wool and animal hide. Every jolt of the horse sent pain flaring through her abdomen, but she didn't cry out. Her daughter was warm against her chest, her breath shallow but steady. The man guiding the horse, Ghost Elk, they'd called him in hushed tones, didn't speak. He rode like he belonged to the land, as if the rain fell around him and not on him. His profile was stone, sharp cheekbones, a hard jaw, and eyes that scanned the dark horizon with the patience of someone who had nothing left to fear. She didn't know why he'd saved the child, she didn't even know his real name. But she knew this. Without him, her daughter would have been buried. Without him, she'd still be bleeding on the floor, surrounded by people who looked at her, only as a womb and a burden. The sky lightened just enough to turn the desert a sickly blue-gray. They passed a cluster of withered Joshua trees bent by wind and age. Ghost Elk slowed the horse and helped her down beneath one, then wordlessly began to build a fire. The child whimpered. Her fingers twitched, face scrunching up, fragile and pink and defiant. Her cries weren't loud, but they were persistent, each one clawing at her mother's insides. She huddled near the fire as it crackled to life, feeding heat into her bones. Her clothes clung to her like second skin. Ghost Elk offered a pouch of something herbal-smelling. She took it, sniffed, grimaced, then drank. Bitterness spread through her mouth, but warmth followed it down her throat. Fever will come, he said, low, like the fire was listening. Mine or hers, she rasped. Both. He set a bundle of dried herbs near the flames to steam. The scent was sharp, clean, like pine and ash. She rocked slightly, her hands never leaving the baby. She hadn't chosen a name. No name felt real yet. The child had come into the world under blood and silence, then dirt and rain. She needed something more than letters. She needed a reason. They'll follow us, she said after a while. Yes. Why? Because a dead girl doesn't need revenge. A living one does. She turned to him, jaw clenched. They thought she was dead. They told me she was. She wasn't. And you knew it. I felt her. Because she's yours. He didn't smile, didn't offer comfort. But there was something in his voice, a steadiness she hadn't heard in years. He spoke like the truth was not a choice. By mid-morning, the sky had burned off its clouds, leaving only a smothering heat. The baby grew restless. Her tiny fists punched the air. Her skin fevered. She wouldn't feed. The mother's milk hadn't come. Ghost Elk handed her strips of boiled root soaked in broth, which she squeezed into the baby's mouth drop by drop. She's too small, she said. Too weak. She dug her way through dirt, he replied. She'll keep breathing. They rode again, cutting westward toward high ground. The desert shimmered around them, its heat rising like ghosts from the sand. Every mile took them farther from the farm, from the hands that had tried to bury her child and silence her. Yet the weight of it still clung, tight around her ribs, pulsing behind her eyes. Ghost Elk spoke little. He would nod to landmarks, to ravens overhead, to deer tracks half buried under dust. When the sun reached its zenith, he dismounted and began gathering cactus pods, slicing them open with a flint knife. He showed her how to collect the liquid from inside. For fever, he said, handing her a small bowl. She tasted it, mucus thick and sour. She gagged but drank. He watched the baby, who now lay limp but breathing. Her eyelids fluttered like leaves. The fire inside her had dimmed, but it hadn't gone out. I used to think I was weak, she said suddenly. He didn't answer. When I first married into that family, I thought silence was strength, obedience, letting things pass. She looked down at her daughter. Now I think silence is what kills you, slow and stupid. Ghost Elk sat across from her, legs crossed, hands still. They teach silence in different ways, sometimes with words, sometimes with fists, sometimes with graves. She felt tears hot behind her eyes but didn't let them fall. Instead, she reached down and placed her palm against her daughter's chest. The heartbeat was faint, like a bird's wings brushing glass, but it was there. They made camp near a dry riverbed under a jagged overhang of red stone. Coyotes howled in the distance, their cries rolling over the land like laughter. She slept, sitting up, arms around her child, one hand on the handle of a rusted kitchen knife she'd taken before fleeing. She dreamed of dirt pressing against her mouth, of hands forcing her down, of her child slipping away under a sky that wouldn't look. When she awoke, Ghost Elk was already preparing to move. We have to cross open country, he said. You'll ride alone for part of it. Why? If I ride beside you, they'll track us easier. 2 riders leave 2 sets of signs. And if they catch me, then they won't be catching a childless widow. Her breath caught. You'd let them take me? No. I'll be behind you. She hesitated. What if I fall? You won't. She rode. The horse's stride was smoother this time, the pain in her body dulled to a dull throb that settled into her bones. She kept her eyes forward, her grip steady. The child whimpered but didn't cry. A shadow flickered across the desert floor, hawk overhead. Her gaze drifted up, then forward again. The wind shifted. She felt it before she heard it. Hoofbeats. Distant but gaining. She turned her head slightly. Dust. Riders. Her breath hitched. She pressed the child closer, kicked the horse gently. The animal responded with a burst of speed. She had no weapon, no way to fight. All she could do was ride and pray the pounding in her chest didn't drown her. The sound of the pursuers grew, louder, then stopped. A scream pierced the stillness. A man's scream, then silence. She didn't stop. A quarter-mile later, Ghost Elk emerged from a thicket of low brush, his blade red. He said nothing. She said less. They rode until dusk. The time they stopped again, her arms were shaking. She couldn't hold the baby. Ghost Elk took her gently, cradled the child against his chest as he mixed a paste from crushed leaves. Rub this on her feet, he instructed. She obeyed. The soles were warm. Too warm. She's not eating enough, she said. She's fighting. The fire crackled between them, small and cautious. She leaned back against a stone and watched her child's chest rise and fall. You think she'll live? He paused, then nodded. Yes. You sound sure. I saw her before she was born. In dream. She blinked at him. What did you see? A girl screaming through the earth, loud enough to split it. She didn't respond. The night stretched out around them. Later, ghost elk sang. Low, rhythmic, without language, she understood. It wasn't for her. It was for the child, for the stars, for something older than either of them. The baby stirred. For the first time in hours, she opened her eyes, cloudy, unfocused, but searching. The mother laughed. Quietly. A laugh tinged with disbelief, wonder, and rage all at once. You're still here, she whispered. You stubborn, tiny thing. She thought of the name her grandmother once told her, long before marriage, before this desert swallowed her. It meant flower that blooms in ash. She spoke it softly, testing the sound on her tongue. The baby blinked. Ghost elk didn't look up, but a faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Night settled again. In the distance, the wind picked up. They weren't safe, but they were moving, and she had named her daughter. The desert gave way to scrubland, dotted with twisted oaks and brittle sage. The days grew hotter, the nights colder. Time blurred. They traveled by shadows, resting when the sun beat down like a hammer. Ghost elk moved like he had no destination, but always knew where to go. She followed because to stop meant death. For her, for the baby, for the name she had finally spoken into the world. The child, her child, grew stronger in strange, quiet ways. Her limbs still trembled when she stretched, and her cries were thin as thread, but her eyes opened more often now. Dark eyes like wet earth after a storm. She watched everything, like she understood that watching could mean survival. One morning, just after dawn, the woman caught her first real smile. It was fleeting, like sunlight over a canyon rim, but it lit something deep inside her that hadn't been warm in years. Ghost elk said nothing, only gave a brief nod. It was his way of marking. Significance, silent, firm, undeniable. They came across a ghost town 4 days later. Just a spine of buildings and a sun-bleached sign that barely held onto the name Juniper Hollow. Wind slid through broken windows. Glass crunched beneath boots. A rusted bell above the old chapel door swung weakly, hitting metal in soft clangs. They stayed in what had once been a general store. There was still an old cot in the back, covered in dust and forgotten linens. She wiped it clean as best she could and laid the baby there, placing stones around the edges so she wouldn't roll off. Ghost elk scavenged supplies, dried beans, cracked lanterns, a jar of honey so thick it took both hands to open. He brought a sewing kit with bent needles and bits of faded cloth. You'll need it, he said. She started stitching clothes for the baby that night. Tiny, uneven things with loose threads and crooked seams. But they fit, and they held. For the first time in weeks, she almost felt human again. Why are you helping us? She asked one evening, the fire throwing long shadows across the wooden walls. He didn't look up, because you didn't bury her. I didn't save her either. You tried, that's enough. She studied him. His movements were precise, deliberate. He was a man who had buried people, who knew the weight of it in his shoulders. Maybe he'd failed someone once, maybe more than once. They'll still be looking, she said. He nodded. They're close. She went cold. How close? 2 days, maybe less. They're not tracking just with eyes. They've got someone, old blood, someone who listens to bones and birds. A shiver crept down her spine. A tracker? Worse. A whisperer. She didn't know the term, but she understood enough. Someone who knew the old ways, twisted, now into something dark. someone who could read ash and footprints and know the truth behind them. "We can't outrun that," she said. "No," he agreed. "We'll have to stand." Fear clenched her throat. "You mean fight?" He finally looked at her. "I mean endure." That night the wind brought the smell of smoke. By morning, Ghost Elk had left. No warning, no explanation. She woke to find a circle of stones left in the doorway. A sign. Protection. Or maybe a promise. She didn't panic. She couldn't afford to. Instead, she wrapped the baby close and waited. If he'd left, it was for a reason. Before noon, hoofbeats echoed through the empty streets. She stepped into the main room of the store, knife in hand. The baby stirred but didn't cry. Outside, a single rider approached, not her husband. A stranger, younger, clean-shaven, face still soft with the kind of cruelty that hadn't yet been tested. He dismounted, scanning the building. "You in there?" he called. "We don't want no trouble, just the child." She didn't answer. "You stole something that don't belong to you," he added. "We came to put that right." Her grip tightened on the knife. The man stepped closer, hand on his holster. "You think you're alone? We know that Navajo bastard left you. You're just a woman now. Just a woman with a mistake in her arms." Something inside her snapped. She stepped into the doorway, eyes hard. "She's not a mistake," she said. The man froze. He hadn't expected her to show herself. Not bleeding, not weak, not defiant. "She's my daughter," she said, voice like dry stone. "And if you want her, you'll have to cut her from my arms." A beat of silence. Then he smiled, slow and mean. "That can be arranged." He moved for the gun. A shot cracked the silence. His hat flew from his head. He staggered, stunned but unhurt. Ghost Elk stepped from the chapel, rifle steady. "I'd think hard before your next move," he said calmly. The man dropped his hand. "You were warned," Ghost Elk added, "but you didn't listen." From the hills, more figures appeared. Not riders, walkers. 4, maybe 5. Some bore weapons. One, an older woman in dark robes, stood still, her eyes fixed on the child in the woman's arms. The whisperer, the why. Others stayed back. The woman stepped forward, stopping just beyond the fence. "Return her," she said softly. "The land chose. You disrespected the choice." "She lives," the mother replied. "She wasn't meant to. You tore her from the cycle. I pulled her from a hole. You cursed us all." "No," she said, stepping forward, baby held tight. "You did, when you decided she wasn't enough. When you chose a grave over a cradle." The whisperer's eyes narrowed. "She will bring ruin. Then let it come." The whisperer's lips curled. She lifted one hand. The wind howled. Dust rose in a circle around them, sand scraping skin and bone. Ghost Elk stepped in front of them. He spoke a word in his tongue, old, fierce. The wind stopped. The air went still. The whisperer faltered. "You think your curses are older than the mountain?" Ghost Elk said. "You think death only comes from you?" She hissed and turned away. The others followed. No shots, no fight, just footsteps receding into silence. The mother collapsed to her knees, clutching her child. Her body trembled. She didn't cry. Ghost Elk stood over her. "You endured," he said. She nodded slowly. "She lives. For now. That's enough." She stood, unsteady but upright. The baby opened her eyes again, and this time her cry was loud, strong. It echoed through the ghost town and into the hills. It wasn't over, but they had made it through the day. They buried the child's afterbirth beneath a crooked mesquite tree on the edge of the ghost town. The old way. The right way. Ghost Elk burned sage over the soil, murmuring words she didn't understand, but felt in her bones. The baby, swaddled, now in fresh cloth sewn from the store's forgotten linens, slept against her chest, her small breath steady. It was the first time the mother allowed herself to believe, truly believe, that the child might live. But peace was a brittle thing. Out here, and it broke with the sound of a bell. The chapel's rusted bell clanged wildly in the late afternoon, even though no wind moved through Juniper Hollow. Ghost Elk tensed instantly. The mother felt her stomach turn cold. She stepped back, clutching, her daughter closer. From the horizon came a dust cloud, a full band of riders, not scouts this time, men armed and armored with fury, at least 10, maybe more, her husband among them. She saw him clearly, jaw tight, beard dusted with desert, grime, rifle slung across his chest like a declaration of law. Behind him his brothers, the in-laws who'd told her to hush when she screamed in labor, the same who had carried the shovel. They rode slow, deliberate, a wall of muscle and memory bearing down on her. Inside, Ghost Elk said, calm but firm. She hesitated, eyes still on the horizon. I'm not hiding, she said. You're not, he agreed, but she must. She nodded. Her limbs felt like lead. Inside the chapel, she placed the baby in a box lined with blankets and straw. Her daughter squirmed but didn't cry. She tucked the knife beneath the cloth, just in case. Back outside, Ghost Elk had his rifle in hand. The woman stood beside him. The riders had stopped just at the town's edge. The man she'd once called husband dismounted first. You've made a mess of things, he said, voice echoing off the boarded windows. I cleaned up yours, she replied. A flicker of something passed over his face, not regret, not shame, something uglier, frustration, fear. She wasn't yours to keep, he said. She was never yours to throw away. Another man stepped forward, his older brother, the one with the scar splitting his eyebrow. You think you can shame us and walk free? You're dead, girl. You just haven't laid down yet. Ghost Elk raised his rifle. Then lay her down, yourself, he said. See if you walk away. The men laughed, but it was nervous. Ghost Elk wasn't a man to joke with. Even they knew that. Still, they had numbers. And behind them, the Whisperer emerged again, her robes darker now, as if the dust itself had clung to her soul. She didn't speak. She stared straight at the chapel. She's in there, she said. The child, the one who breaks patterns, the one who wakes old spirits. The husband raised his rifle. Give her to us. No, the mother said. He fired. The shot missed. It hit the chapel's post, splintering wood inches from her head. Everything exploded into motion. Ghost Elk fired twice. 2 men fell. The others scattered, trying to circle wide. Gunfire cracked like thunder. The woman ducked behind a stone. Pillar, heart pounding, ears ringing. She grabbed a pistol from Ghost Elk's belt, the weight unfamiliar but certain. Her hands shook. She swallowed fear. One rider charged close. She stepped out and fired, missed. He raised his own gun, smiling. Then his horse reared with a scream. An arrow lodged in its flank. The man tumbled down. Ghost Elk didn't wait. He was on the rider in seconds, blade drawn. Blood sprayed across the dry earth. The woman turned. More coming. She ran to the chapel. Inside, the baby still lay quietly. Dust filtered through the cracked ceiling. The light made everything look ancient. From outside, more shots, screams, shouts. She stood over her daughter. The chapel door burst open. Her husband, face twisted, eyes wild. He held a knife. You're out of chances, he said, stepping forward. You want to die for that thing? She's mine, she whispered. She's a curse, she's a beginning. He lunged. She moved without thinking. The pistol in her hand rose, clumsy and late. He grabbed her wrist, forced it down. The 2 of them crashed to the floor. His knife slashed out, cutting across her forearm. Pain bloomed. She screamed. He raised the blade again, a sound, soft, high, piercing. The baby wailed. It froze him. The day cry filled the chapel, sharp as glass, louder than seemed possible. It cracked the silence open like a struck bell. The man flinched. She didn't. With her free hand, she grabbed the hidden kitchen knife from the box. She drove it upward into his side. Deep. He gasped, dropped the blade, staggered back. She stood. His mouth moved, but no words came. He fell to his knees, then forward. Dead. She didn't weep. She scooped up her daughter and turned. Outside, smoke curled into the sky. Ghost Elk was on his knees, blood on his side. Around him, the others fled. Some limped, others crawled. The Whisperer was gone. Only blood remained where she'd stood. The woman ran to him. He looked up, grimacing. Got careless, he muttered. You're not dying. Everyone does. No, she said. Not now. Not you. He reached up, hand brushing the baby's cheek. She screamed, like thunder. I told you. She laughed through the tears. You were right. You'll take her north, he whispered. To the Red Hills. There's safety there. People who remember. Women who survived worse. I won't leave you. You won't be. I'll ride with you in her blood. She shook her head, sobbing now. He smiled, then exhaled. Stillness. The woman sat beside him until the sun dipped low and the wind cooled. She cleaned his wounds, covered his body, then built a fire and sang, not his words, but her own. That night under the stars, the child slept in her arms and dreamed, and the mother, once silenced and buried, looked up at the stars and said the names of the dead. Not in mourning, but in defiance. By morning, she was gone. No trail left behind. No footsteps in the dust, only a child's cry in the wind and the memory of a mother who chose to burn rather than be buried.